Most people don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they keep trying to build a better future with the same habits, the same thinking, and the same version of themselves that created their present. We wake up every day hoping something will change, while quietly repeating what we've always done. And then we wonder why life feels stuck. There comes a moment, sometimes after failure, sometimes after loss, sometimes after deep exhaustion, when you realize that fixing the outside won't fix the inside. You can change your job, your location, even the people around you. But if you take the same mindset with you, you'll recreate the same results. Life has a way of reflecting who you are, not who you wish to be. Rebuilding yourself is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you were meant to be before excuses, fear, and comfort lowered your standards. It's about recognizing that growth is not an event. It's a decision you make daily. The most powerful transformation doesn't begin with motivation or luck. It begins with responsibility, discipline, and the courage to outgrow the version of yourself that no longer fits the future you want to live. Personal responsibility is the moment a person stops looking outward for the cause of their life and starts looking inward for the solution. It is the quiet but powerful realization that where you are today is largely the result of the decisions you have made, the habits you have practiced, and the standards you have accepted. This idea can feel uncomfortable because it removes excuses, but it is also liberating because it gives control back to the individual. When responsibility is accepted, change becomes possible, because change can only happen where control exists. Many people wait for circumstances to improve before they decide to improve themselves. They wait for better opportunities, better treatment, better luck, or better timing. But personal responsibility flips that thinking. It says that progress does not begin when life changes, it begins when you change. A person who blames the economy, their upbringing, their boss, or their past may feel justified, but they also remain stuck, because none of those things are fully within their control. Responsibility is the act of saying, even if this is not my fault, it is still my responsibility to respond wisely. Taking responsibility does not mean denying hardship or pretending that life is fair. It means understanding that no matter how unfair the situation may be, the response to it determines the outcome. Two people can face the same challenge and end up in completely different places, not because of the challenge itself, but because of how they chose to think and act afterward. Responsibility is the bridge between circumstance and character. Without it, growth is delayed indefinitely. Personal responsibility also changes the way a person views failure. Instead of seeing failure as proof of inability or bad luck, it becomes feedback. When responsibility is embraced, mistakes are no longer something to hide from. They become something to learn from. A responsible person asks better questions. What did I do or fail to do? What can I improve? What skill do I need to develop? This mindset turns setbacks into stepping stones and frustration into instruction. Another powerful aspect of responsibility is that it raises personal standards. When someone truly accepts that their life is shaped by their choices, they begin to care more about how they spend their time, who they listen to, and what habits they allow to repeat. Responsibility creates awareness, and awareness leads to discipline. It becomes harder to justify procrastination, poor habits, or negative thinking when you understand that each one quietly shapes your future. Responsibility makes success less mysterious and failure less confusing. This principle also affects how people relate to others. When responsibility is lacking, relationships are filled with complaints, expectations, and disappointment. When responsibility is present, relationships are approached with contribution rather than demand. Instead of asking, "Why don't they understand me?" the responsible person asks, "How can I communicate better?" Instead of saying, "They should motivate me," they decide to become self-motivated. This shift improves leadership, teamwork, and personal influence because people are naturally drawn to those who own their actions. Personal responsibility is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. It shows up in small moments, choosing to be prepared, choosing to follow through, choosing to learn instead of complain. These choices may seem insignificant in isolation, but over time they compound into confidence, competence, and credibility. A person who consistently accepts responsibility develops self-respect because they know their progress is earned, not accidental. Without personal responsibility, self-development becomes impossible. You cannot improve what you refuse to own. Growth requires an honest assessment of strengths, weaknesses, habits, and attitudes, and honesty only exists where responsibility is present. The moment someone stops saying, "This is just how I am," and starts saying, "This is something I can work on," they place themselves on the path of real change. Responsibility also builds resilience. When life becomes difficult, a responsible person does not collapse into victimhood. They may feel disappointment or frustration, but they do not surrender their power. They understand that while they may not control every event, they always control their effort, their attitude, and their response. This understanding creates inner stability, even when external conditions are unstable. Ultimately, personal responsibility is the foundation upon which all achievement is built. Skills can be learned, strategies can be taught, and opportunities can be created, but none of them matter if a person refuses to take ownership of their life. Responsibility is the starting point because it activates choice, and choice is the greatest power any individual possesses. Your philosophy is the collection of beliefs, ideas, attitudes, and assumptions through which you interpret life. It is the internal framework that quietly guides your decisions long before action ever takes place. Every choice you make, whether conscious or automatic, is filtered through this personal philosophy. Because of this, your future does not unfold by accident, it unfolds according to the way you think. When your philosophy changes, your direction changes, and when your direction changes, your results inevitably follow. Most people underestimate how powerful their philosophy really is because it develops slowly and invisibly. It is shaped by childhood experiences, cultural influences, education, and repeated emotional responses. Over time, certain thoughts become beliefs, and beliefs turn into unquestioned rules for living. Statements like, "This is just how things are," or "People like me don't succeed," or "I'll try when I feel ready" may sound harmless, but they quietly define the boundaries of what a person believes is possible. A weak philosophy produces weak results, not because the person lacks ability, but because their thinking limits their effort and expectation. Your philosophy determines how you interpret events. When something goes wrong, one person sees injustice, while another sees instruction. The difference is not intelligence or luck, but perspective. A person with a strong philosophy looks for meaning rather than excuses. They believe that life is happening for their growth, not against their comfort. This belief does not remove difficulty, but it gives difficulty purpose, and purpose fuels perseverance. Without a guiding philosophy, challenges feel random and overwhelming, leading many to quit before progress has a chance to appear. What you believe about time also plays a major role in shaping your future. If your philosophy treats time casually, decisions become careless. If time is respected, priorities become clearer. People who believe that tomorrow will always provide another chance often delay important actions, while those who believe time is precious act with intention. The same is true with effort. A philosophy that values comfort over growth will choose ease, while a philosophy that values progress will choose discipline, even when it feels inconvenient. Your philosophy also influences the standards you accept. Standards are not what you desire, they are what you tolerate. If your philosophy allows mediocrity, excuses will feel reasonable. If it demands excellence, improvement becomes non-negotiable. People often wonder why they remain stuck despite wanting more, not realizing that their philosophy still permits less. Change begins when belief aligns with ambition, when the internal rules are upgraded to match the life one wishes to build. Another important aspect of philosophy is how it shapes your relationship with failure. If failure is viewed as something to be avoided at all costs, growth becomes slow and cautious. If failure is seen as a natural part of learning, action becomes bolder and progress faster. The future belongs to those who are willing to fail intelligently, adjusting their approach rather than abandoning their effort. This willingness comes from a philosophy that values learning more than approval. Your philosophy also determines how you respond to success. Some people sabotage progress because they subconsciously believe they do not deserve better results. Others grow complacent because they believe success is something to be enjoyed rather than expanded. A balanced philosophy understands that success is both a reward and a responsibility. It is something to appreciate and something to build upon. Without this balance, progress either stalls or collapses. The most important thing to understand is that philosophy is not fixed. It can be refined, strengthened, and redesigned. Reading, listening, observing, and reflecting all contribute to its evolution. Every time you encounter a new idea, you are given an opportunity to challenge an old belief. Growth accelerates when a person becomes intentional about what ideas they allow to shape them. The future improves not through wishing, but through upgrading the thinking that drives behavior. Your life will continue to move in the direction of your dominant thoughts, whether you examine them or not. By choosing to develop a philosophy rooted in responsibility, growth, discipline, and learning, you quietly but powerfully redesign your future from the inside out. Small daily disciplines are the quiet actions that shape a life over time. They rarely attract attention, and they often feel insignificant in the moment, but their power lies in consistency. A single choice to read a few pages, practice a skill, save a small amount, or reflect on the day may not appear to change anything immediately. Yet, when these actions are repeated day after day, they compound, producing results that seem extraordinary to those who overlook the process. Transformation is not usually the result of one dramatic decision, but of many small decisions honored repeatedly. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a short period and underestimate what can be achieved over years of steady effort. Because of this, they chase motivation, intensity, and quick results, often abandoning efforts when enthusiasm fades. Small disciplines bypass this problem by requiring less emotional energy. They do not depend on feeling inspired, they depend on commitment. When actions are small enough to be manageable, they become sustainable, and sustainability is what creates lasting change. Daily disciplines shape identity as much as they shape outcomes. Each time you follow through on a small promise to yourself, you reinforce the belief that you are someone who keeps commitments. This builds self-trust, which is far more valuable than temporary motivation. On the other hand, repeatedly ignoring small responsibilities weakens confidence, even if the consequences are not immediately visible. Over time, these internal signals influence how much responsibility you are willing to take on and how capable you believe yourself to be. The power of small disciplines is rooted in the principle of accumulation. Just as small expenses can quietly drain finances, small positive actions can quietly build strength, knowledge, and character. 10 minutes of learning each day becomes hours of growth over a month and weeks over a year. Small improvements, repeated consistently, lead to a level of mastery that cannot be achieved through occasional bursts of effort. What appears slow at first eventually becomes unstoppable. Small disciplines also reduce resistance. Large goals often feel overwhelming because they require major changes all at once. This creates fear, procrastination, or perfectionism. Small daily actions lower the barrier to entry. They make progress feel approachable. Instead of focusing on the entire journey, attention is placed on the next simple step. This keeps momentum alive because motion, even slow motion, creates energy and confidence. Consistency in small disciplines also sharpens awareness. When you engage in daily habits, you become more attentive to your behavior, choices, and patterns. You begin to notice what supports your growth and what undermines it. This awareness allows for adjustment without self-judgment. Progress becomes a process of refinement rather than self-criticism. The goal is not to be perfect, but to be better than yesterday. Another important aspect of daily discipline is that it prepares you for opportunity. Opportunities often appear suddenly, but they favor those who are already prepared. Small disciplines quietly build the skills, mindset, and readiness needed to take advantage of these moments. From the outside, success may look like luck, but from the inside, it is often the natural result of long-term preparation. When opportunity arrives, discipline ensures you are ready rather than surprised. Small disciplines also protect against regret. Many of life's biggest disappointments come not from major mistakes, but from neglect. Neglecting health, relationships, learning, or personal growth rarely causes immediate pain, which makes it easy to ignore. However, over time, the cost becomes significant. Daily disciplines act as a safeguard, ensuring that important areas of life receive consistent attention before problems arise. The challenge with small disciplines is not understanding their value, but trusting the process. Results are delayed, and progress is subtle, especially in the beginning. This delay causes many to abandon the practice prematurely. Those who succeed learn to value progress even when it is invisible. They understand that growth is happening beneath the surface long before it becomes visible to others. Over time, small daily disciplines create momentum, and momentum creates belief. What once felt difficult becomes routine, and what once seemed impossible becomes normal. The person who commits to small actions consistently does not rely on dramatic change, because they are already changing every day. Outgrowing your old self is one of the most difficult and necessary parts of rebuilding yourself. Growth is not only about adding new skills or gaining more knowledge, it is about shedding identities, habits, and ways of thinking that once felt comfortable, but no longer serve the direction you want to go. Many people desire a higher level of life while still clinging to behaviors and beliefs that belong to a previous version of themselves. This inner conflict is what keeps progress slow and inconsistent. Every level of life demands a different version of you. The attitudes that helped you survive may not be the ones that help you succeed. The coping mechanisms that once protected you can later become limitations. When you try to move forward without changing internally, you create resistance. Life will continue to present the same lessons until you are willing to evolve beyond them. Growth requires alignment between who you are becoming and what you are trying to achieve. One of the reasons outgrowing your old self feels uncomfortable is because identity is involved. People often define themselves by past experiences, roles, or labels. Statements like, "This is just how I am," or "I've always been this way," create emotional attachments to old patterns. Letting go of these patterns can feel like losing a part of yourself, even when that part is holding you back. However, growth does not erase who you were. It builds upon it by refining what remains and releasing what no longer fits. Another challenge is familiarity. Even negative habits can feel safe simply because they are known. The old self operates on predictable routines, familiar excuses, and established comfort zones. The new self requires uncertainty, effort, and learning. The human mind naturally resists uncertainty, which is why many people return to old behaviors during moments of stress. Outgrowing the old self means choosing long-term growth over short-term comfort again and again. Relationships often reflect the version of yourself you are operating from. As you grow, some connections may feel strained or misaligned. This does not mean others are wrong or that you are superior. It simply means growth changes your priorities, conversations, and standards. Holding on to every relationship from your past can sometimes anchor you to old behaviors. Outgrowing yourself may require redefining boundaries and choosing environments that support who you are becoming rather than who you were. Outgrowing your old self also involves upgrading your standards. Standards govern what you accept, tolerate, and expect from yourself. When standards remain low, behavior follows. Raising standards means making decisions that the old version of you would have avoided. It means choosing discipline over excuses, learning over comfort, and responsibility over blame. These choices can feel unnatural at first because they challenge deeply ingrained habits, but repetition turns them into the new normal. There is often grief involved in this process. You may grieve lost time, missed opportunities, or the realization that some beliefs were limiting. This grief is not a sign of weakness. It is evidence of awareness. Growth brings clarity, and clarity can be painful. However, staying the same to avoid discomfort leads to a much heavier regret. The temporary discomfort of growth is always lighter than the long-term weight of stagnation. Outgrowing your old self requires patience. Change does not happen instantly, and progress is rarely linear. There will be moments of relapse, doubt, and frustration. These moments do not mean failure, they mean adjustment. The key is not perfection, but persistence. Each time you choose growth, even imperfectly, you weaken the influence of the old self and strengthen the foundation of the new. This process also demands honesty. You cannot outgrow what you refuse to acknowledge. Honest self-reflection reveals patterns that need to change and strengths that need to be developed. It shifts focus from external blame to internal responsibility. This honesty can be uncomfortable, but it is also empowering because it places growth back in your control. Becoming a new version of yourself is not about pretending or forcing change. It is about aligning your actions with your future rather than your past. When you consistently act in ways that support who you want to become, the old self gradually loses relevance. Growth then becomes less about struggle and more about direction, as your identity begins to match your intention. Adversity is often misunderstood because it arrives without invitation and rarely feels fair. When challenges appear, the natural response is to question why they exist or to view them as obstacles meant to delay progress. Yet adversity is not designed to punish. It exists to develop qualities that comfort never could. Difficulty introduces pressure, and pressure reveals strength, weakness, and character in ways that ease never will. Without resistance, growth remains theoretical rather than practical. Adversity forces awareness. When everything is smooth, habits remain unexamined and flaws stay hidden. Struggle removes this illusion. It exposes gaps in skill, discipline, patience, and thinking. This exposure is not meant to shame, but to inform. It shows where development is required and where effort must be redirected. In this way, adversity becomes a form of education, offering lessons that no classroom can provide. One of the greatest gifts of adversity is resilience. When a person is tested and survives, confidence deepens, not because the challenge was easy, but because it was faced. Each difficulty endured becomes evidence that future challenges can also be handled. This quiet confidence cannot be taught or borrowed. It must be earned through experience. Adversity builds inner strength by requiring action in moments when quitting feels justified. Challenges also refine priorities. In times of difficulty, what truly matters becomes clearer. distractions lose their appeal, and energy is redirected toward what is essential. This clarity helps eliminate excess and focus effort more effectively. Adversity simplifies thinking by stripping away the unnecessary and highlighting what demands attention. In this sense, struggle becomes a tool for alignment rather than a source of chaos. Adversity also strengthens problem-solving ability. Comfort encourages routine, while difficulty demands creativity. When familiar methods fail, new approaches must be considered. This stretches the mind and encourages adaptability. Over time, repeated exposure to challenges develops mental flexibility, allowing a person to respond to change rather than resist it. Adaptability becomes a valuable skill in an unpredictable world. Another powerful effect of adversity is humility. Struggle reminds individuals that growth is ongoing and that mastery is never final. It tempers arrogance and replaces it with curiosity. Humility opens the door to learning, feedback, and improvement. A person who has faced difficulty often listens more carefully and acts more thoughtfully, having learned the cost of overconfidence. Adversity also deepens empathy. Those who have struggled are better able to understand others who are struggling. This shared experience creates connection and compassion. It broadens perspective and reduces judgment. Through adversity, people often develop a greater appreciation for support, effort, and perseverance, which strengthens relationships and leadership. There is also a strengthening of discipline that comes from adversity. When conditions are unfavorable, motivation alone is insufficient. Action must be taken despite discomfort. This builds discipline, which is far more reliable than motivation. Discipline learned under pressure carries forward into future situations, providing stability even when circumstances are uncertain. The way adversity is interpreted determines its impact. When seen as punishment, it breeds bitterness. When seen as preparation, it encourages growth. Preparation implies purpose, and purpose fuels endurance. The belief that difficulty is shaping rather than sabotaging progress changes the emotional experience of struggle. It transforms pain into process and hardship into training. Adversity also tests values. Under pressure, true priorities are revealed. Integrity, patience, perseverance, and responsibility are either strengthened or compromised. These moments shape character in lasting ways. The choices made during difficulty often define a person more clearly than those made during ease. Over time, adversity creates perspective. Looking back, many people recognize that their most meaningful growth occurred during their hardest seasons. The struggle that once felt unbearable becomes the foundation of wisdom and strength. This perspective does not minimize pain, but it gives it context. Adversity does not guarantee growth, response determines outcome. When faced with difficulty, a person can either shrink or expand. Choosing to learn, adapt, and persist allows adversity to fulfill its purpose as preparation, shaping the individual for responsibilities and opportunities that comfort could never provide. Self-development is the most valuable investment a person can make because it directly influences every other area of life. Unlike money, possessions, or external status, personal growth cannot be taken away or diminished by changing circumstances. Skills, knowledge, mindset, and character remain with an individual wherever they go, shaping how they respond to opportunity, challenge, and responsibility. When effort is invested in becoming better, the return compounds across time and situations. Many people focus their energy on external achievements while neglecting internal growth. They chase positions, titles, or recognition, believing these will create fulfillment or security. However, external success without internal development is fragile. When circumstances change, those who have not invested in themselves often struggle to adapt. Self-development provides stability because it strengthens the person rather than the situation. A developed individual can rebuild even after loss because their greatest assets remain intact. Investing in oneself begins with the decision to learn continuously. Learning is not limited to formal education. It includes reading, observing, listening, and reflecting. Each new idea expands perspective and increases understanding. Over time, this accumulation of knowledge sharpens judgment and improves decision-making. Better decisions lead to better outcomes, not by chance, but by clarity. Learning also keeps the mind flexible, allowing adaptation in a constantly changing world. Self-development also involves emotional growth. Understanding emotions, managing reactions, and cultivating patience and resilience all contribute to long-term success. Emotional maturity improves relationships, leadership, and self-control. Many conflicts and failures are not the result of lack of intelligence, but lack of emotional awareness. Investing in emotional development enhances communication, reduces unnecessary tension, and strengthens trust with others. Another important element of self-development is discipline. Discipline is the bridge between intention and achievement. Developing the ability to act consistently, even when motivation is low, creates reliability. This reliability builds confidence both internally and externally. People who develop discipline are trusted with greater responsibility because they have demonstrated consistency. Discipline also protects against impulsive decisions that undermine long-term goals. Self-development strengthens self-belief. Confidence rooted in growth is different from confidence based on appearance or approval. It comes from knowing that effort has been invested, skills have been developed, and progress has been earned. This confidence is quiet and stable, allowing individuals to take risks, accept feedback, and pursue challenges without fear of failure. It is not the absence of doubt, but the ability to act despite it. Investing in oneself also enhances value. Value is not determined by desire, but by contribution. The more skills, insight, and capability a person develops, the more valuable they become to others and to society. This increased value often leads to greater opportunities, influence, and reward. However, the primary benefit is not external recognition, but the ability to contribute meaningfully and effectively. Self-development encourages responsibility. As awareness increases, so does accountability. Growth reveals both potential and limitation, prompting action rather than excuse. This sense of responsibility strengthens independence and reduces reliance on external validation. A developed individual becomes proactive, seeking improvement rather than waiting for instruction or permission. Another aspect of self-development is clarity of purpose. As understanding deepens, priorities become clearer. Time and energy are used more intentionally. Distractions lose their power, and effort is aligned with meaningful goals. This clarity reduces stress and increases satisfaction because actions reflect values rather than impulse. Self-development also prepares individuals for change. Change is inevitable, but readiness is optional. Those who invest in themselves are better equipped to navigate transitions, learn new skills, and adjust strategies. They view change as a challenge to grow rather than a threat to security. This mindset fosters resilience and long-term relevance. The greatest return on self-development is freedom. Freedom of thought, freedom of choice, and freedom to respond wisely to life's demands. When a person grows internally, they are less controlled by fear, habit, or circumstance. This freedom allows them to design their life with intention, guided by capability rather than limitation. As we come to the end of this message, remember that rebuilding yourself is not a one-time act, but a lifelong commitment. It begins the moment you take responsibility for where you are and decide that growth is no longer optional. Your philosophy shapes your future, your daily disciplines shape your habits, and your willingness to outgrow your old self shapes your destiny. Adversity is not sent to stop you, but to prepare you, and the investment you make in yourself will always yield the greatest return. Progress does not demand perfection, it demands persistence. Each small decision made with intention moves you closer to the person you are capable of becoming. When you choose growth over comfort and responsibility over excuse, life begins to respond differently. Because you are no longer waiting for change, you are creating it. I wish you the courage to take that responsibility, the discipline to stay consistent, and the patience to trust the process as you rebuild yourself step by step.